Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining today. Good morning, depending on your time zone. For those of you in the West Coast like myself, my name is Quinn Patterson. I'm an associate research analyst at the CNA Center for Justice Research and Innovation, and I work as the resource and outreach lead for the body-worn camera policy and implementation program from the technical assistance perspective. On behalf of the Bureau of Justice Assistance, I want to welcome you to today's webinar on working with body-worn camera metadata. For the next hour, you're going to hear from a balance of researchers and practitioners on the topic of body-worn camera metadata. We have representatives from Arizona State University, DePaul, and the Rochester Institute of Technology, as well as representatives from Rochester, New York PD, and the Fairfax County, Virginia Police Department. Again, I want to thank you all for joining today, and I'm going to turn things over to Dr. Mike White, who is going to facilitate this webinar. Mike.
Hey, thanks, Quinn. As Quinn said, my name is Mike White. I'm a professor at Arizona State University, and I'm the co-director of the TTA team here. As Quinn suggested, we have three teams that are going to give us presentations today about metadata. We've got a team from Rochester, New York. Kayla Freemon, Dr. Kayla Freemon is, she's in Chicago now at DePaul, but she's going to be talking about work that she's been doing with the Phoenix Police Department. She's an alum of ASU. And then we've got two representatives from Fairfax County. What I thought I'd do is just for 5 minutes or less, just lay a quick foundation about metadata to make sure we all know what we're talking about in terms of what it actually is. So for it, if someone were to ask you what is metadata, is that metadata is actually data about data. And so it's descriptive information. We're talking about it in the context of your body-worn camera digital footage. So think about all of the digital footage that's in your storage solution system, which is more than likely probably a cloud system. Think of metadata as a roadmap. It is a roadmap of what you have. And given that your storage solution may have, we're talking about petabytes in terms of the data that you might have, that roadmap becomes enormously useful as a tool to organize and think about what you have. A couple other points on metadata. If you do have a cloud storage system that you're using from a vendor, chances are the format and structure of that metadata has been determined already. But the good news is that it can be customizable. So if you want to think about how you can modify metadata, the structure of how that's maintained, you can actually work with your vendor so that it is more consistent with your needs and can link to the other data systems. The other thing that I want to mention quickly is that think about metadata. The tagging system that you have is enormously important as well, because tagging is, as we'll hear from each of the three presentations, one of the ways that you can use metadata to your benefit. So a couple of things on tagging you need to keep in mind is obviously you want to have a sound, clear, good coding scheme for tagging. And, to be honest, we've seen agencies that have developed tagging systems that only have 3 or maybe 4 options versus those that have a dozen or more. So there is quite a bit of variability here, but the key is that you want to make sure it's clear. And so officers, when they are tagging, are not making mistakes. It's straightforward. The codes are mutually exclusive and exhaustive. And obviously you also want that tagging system to be consistent with your records retention schedule, particularly any requirements at the state level, because that retention system is going to be probably eliminating data out the back end as each day data is coming in the front end. And then the last thing on tagging is that some protocols allow you to tag a video with multiple tags. In some cases, it's only a single tag. I think the best way to think about this is NIBRS versus UCR. In the old UCR system, you had to use that hierarchy rule, and you could only apply one tag or one code to a particular incident, whereas with NIBRS you can do multiple tags, and that those options are available in metadata as well. The last thing I thought I'd do real quick before turning it over to the Rochester team, if we could go to the next slide, is just to give you an idea of what metadata might look like. that is what is in the metadata, that roadmap that I mentioned. And so here's an example from New Orleans PD, which has publicly accessible metadata. And you can see some of the information that is available. And this would be for kind of each video file, if you will, that's in the storage system. You've got a link to the officer's short description that's been typed to describe the video incident. You've got when it was uploaded, perhaps a link to CAD or RMS, the date and time of when recording started and ended, how long it was, size, and there's that tag, that very important tag that could be either a single tag or a double tag, geocode information. So, and this is just one example from one department of what's available. But as you look at this, this provides, like I said, that roadmap of what you have in your solution, and gives you an idea of then, or at least a starting point in terms of what you want to do to optimize that data to analyze the footage that you have in your system. So I think with that, that's a little bit of just laying a foundation. I think now we'll turn it over to our three presenters. We're going to start with the Rochester team, and they're going to provide an overview. Then we'll move to the second and third team. As Quinn said, if you have questions, you can just put them in the chat, and we should have plenty of time at the end to handle any questions that come in. I think John Markovic's going to offer some parting thoughts, John's with BJA. So with that, I'll turn it over to Adrian and to Professor McCluskey.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming in today, if it's the morning or the afternoon. I'm John McCluskey. I'm a researcher here at the Rochester Institute of Technology, hence the awesome background that they paid a lot for behind me. I'm filling in for Mian Saladin, who is with RPD, and he's a technology manager, and he manages the day-to-day details of the body-worn camera program and kind of prepped me for this. As an overview, Adrian and I want to talk a little bit about the Rochester as a city and police department, and then tell you a little bit about the history of body-worn camera adoption and some changes in technology. So you can see the early stages of adoption up to a current refresh that has occurred. And then I'll give you some specs on evidence management and the systems that have accompanied the two sort of DEMS management solutions that the Rochester Police Department had. And then I'll give you some broad strokes of how metadata from those systems in the past and currently, and maybe in future expectations, could be used for some different purposes. If you remain awake after that, Adrian is going to give you a deeper dive into those systems and some ideas about the fundamental importance of tagging for making systems more useful, and how body-worn camera footage and other kinds of evidence are anticipated to be integrated into the workflow inside the department. I think roadmap that Mike used is really an important concept, and I've written it down a couple times here to jog my own memory, to think about it like that. And is also as an idea of how it might de-silo data is another way of thinking about it. And so at the end of this, Adrian's going to talk a little bit about how metadata is going to be used to select some video for a project that he's working on with Dr. Ernest Fouquet here at RIT. So, okay, a little background detail on the city of Rochester and its police department. The city of Rochester is located in Western New York. It's about 37 square miles, has about 210,000 residents. And interesting fact to take away is our food here of fame is the garbage plate. So you could look that one up. The Rochester Police Department is led by Chief David Smith, and the organization has a bit more than 750 total employees. 630 of those are sworn officers, and about 325 of those officers work in patrol. If you look at the right side of the screen, you can see the primary crime problem of recent era has been the problem of gun violence. And the chart here on the right shows you that since in 2021, we had, for example, 85 homicides in a city of 200,000. So this homicide rate is elevated, and it's really much higher than the long-term average that you'd see if you went back several decades from 2020. So that should give you a sense of the setting that we're in. Okay, so RPD began field testing cameras in 2015 with some help from a grant from BJA and also participation of one of my colleagues here at RIT, John Clofus, now retired. And by February 2017, there was a complete rollout of that first camera system. So to give you a sense of what that meant, the RPD officers were producing about 300,000 to 400,000 videos per year after 2017, or you could think about that as 30,000 to 40,000 per month. In August 2018, there was an update that included a new camera and also sort of a digital evidence management system the C3 Sentinel system that helped to manage the camera data. If we fast forward to 2021, the RPD released a RFP for camera upgrades, and just recently in September 23, they rolled out this Panasonic camera and a new Genentech clearance digital evidence management system, DEMS, which is also integrating data from their blue light surveillance system. I'm happy to report, according to Mian, that as of early October, there's now 435 cameras deployed in the field. So there's been a successful rollout of that, covering a bit of patrol and more. So what do you get when you switch from an older system and you get an update? Well, on the left, the old system was limited to just storing photos that were taken off of the camera, and also the body-worn videos themselves as video evidence. So that system also, as configured by RPD, was reliant on on-premise server. So that's where storage occurred and where file sharing would happen, for example, if there was evidence to be shared with the prosecutor. The new Genentech system is quite different, right? So it's a full DEMS system, which Adrian's going to explain a bit more, but I can tell you a little bit about that here. It's now a cloud solution, right? So there's no on-premise storage, and it's fully rolled out. Although there is going to be, if you adopt a new system, there's a bit of a switchover here. So while the new system is in place, what do we do with the data that we have from the old system, right? So right now that kind of complete switchover, last bullet, is this period where you have to figure out how do we ingest all the old data and put it into the new system. So that's kind of what that bullet is. What are the advantages of the new system? Well, interestingly enough, those advantages are tightly related to the quality of metadata that Mike mentioned at the outset. What's that roadmap? How does it accompany those body-worn camera video files via tagging? Is the way that this is used to sort out those files inside the system. So in the old system, if we think about it, you could find out what the location of a particular video, where a particular video is shot, only through integration with the CAD system. And so you would actually have to de-silo those two data and integrate them outside of the DEMS system that was in use. The tags in that system were also manually tagged by officers. And a good example of how cumbersome this system was to the possibilities of current practice in the new system was thinking about an audit of videos that was done. Say we did an audit for calls for service that should have a video. Well, that would have required a manual search through the files to match up events with the video, or to confirm that a video even existed, right? So think again about that workflow. 300,000 videos coming in, they're piling up on the server, and then having to go and search through manually to figure out which video goes with which call. So in other words, without some integration, you couldn't tell if there was a video or not, right? That's what the old system offered, and that's what the capacity was at the time. Now under the new system, it has a geolocation feature that's built onto the camera. So it pings much like an automatic vehicle locator system to allow intermittent assessment of the camera's location. And that's going to be an element of metadata inside the new system. We anticipate that this system is going to be integrated with CAD systems as those are updated as well, right? And the ability again here to think about this as kind of de-siloing data so that we don't have to kind of merge outside of systems. There is also in-car tagging available on this new system. And I think Adrian's going to talk about the automation of audits, this last bullet point, but I think you can see as metadata from the BWC system becomes more expansive, maybe it fills out more of that list that Mike showed us in the first few slides. And as tagging of video becomes more accurate, something else that Adrian is going to talk about, it'll allow organizations to develop new processes to check on video and to perhaps use video in new ways. I think this is Adrian's cue. So I'll turn it over to Adrian Martin.
All right, great. So this is a glimpse of how we work with the metadata. It's all on the SQL server, and we pull it into our programming language, and that's how we work with it. And so it's going to be a little tricky to see on the slide, but I highlighted the field that everybody likes to talk about, the classification, the tag, which dictates how long we keep the video. But other important fields are the RMS system number and the CAD number, both of which are manually inputted by the officer. And that's really the only way that we can join up our body-worn camera metadata with our records management system, with crime reports, domestic incident reports, arrest reports, or with the calls for service information. And that's the only way that we can get patient information. And with the new system we're in the process of switching over to, we will instead be getting pings. So on the one hand, that means our metadata will be, in terms of size, will be much larger. Right now we have 1 row per video, but instead we're going to get 1 row per, I believe it's per minute of video. But it'll give us much better information on location of videos, especially for things that take place over a long distance, like a chase or a walking patrol or something like that. So here, I actually made an error in the table. The far right column should say untagged. But this is showing the success of our program's ability to get our video tagged so that we know what we're dealing with. Last year, we had over 250,000 videos and 0 are untagged. And going back farther than that is generally less than 1%. For a year to date, we're at about 0.25%. And generally those videos, those 651 untagged videos are videos from guys who are out on injury or vacation or leave or whatever. So we have been very successful at getting our guys to tag video, even though that it's not a requirement of the system. You're able to upload a video and just leave it. It really is like a manual process. You have to click and type in the numbers and stuff like that. And so if we go to the next slide, I'll show you our secret. It is Mian Saladin, who is unable to defend himself here. But this is a picture of Mian receiving the Sunshine Award for all city employees of, basically being well liked. And I think that's really remarkable when his whole job is nagging people about, hey, why didn't you tag this video? Tag this video. And the email that is screenshotted there with a little pie chart is kind of one of his secrets, where you can see, that the individual labels on the pie slices are not important, but you can see that some pie slices are very small and a couple of them are very big. And the slices of the pie are the patrol sections that the untagged video belongs to. So this gives the captain of Section 1 the ability to say to his guys, well, Section 2 only has 5 videos untagged and you guys have 200. What's going on? We know it's possible because Section 2 can do it. So why can't you guys do it? And it also becomes kind of a, nobody wants to get kind of postered and have their section, the captains don't want to get postered. And so they are the ones kind of riding their guys to make sure they just tag the videos. And because there's no automatic tagging, no automatic integration with our CAD or records management system, that tagging is really important to give our metadata usefulness. The main project we're going to use the metadata in now is our BJA grant funded project, where we're going to be using computer vision and audio transcription and stuff on our body-worn camera videos. And so plan is to start with the easy cases. Easy here meaning that we have 1 officer and 1 non-officer, 2 speakers. So hopefully there'll be a minimum of cross chatter and it'll be easier to identify, to transcribe audio. And so we can use the metadata joining up with our records management system to pull out cases in which there is only 1 officer on the case and only 1 non-officer listed on the crime report. And we can use the section that the crime report is listed in to stratify by geography as well, and stratify by time. So this is, really like a valuable use for our metadata. It means that we're not going to be starting with a random sample of cases where some of them are just going to be, 30 speakers all yelling at once, which would be functionally, impossible for us to deal with. So yeah, that's the secret to success is, Mian's work and, the combination of him kind of playing the sections off against each other, but also just his personality being very positive and upbeat. And then that's allowing us to really get a lot of value out of our metadata.
Great, awesome. So I am Dr. Kayla Freemon. I'm an assistant professor at DePaul University. I'm going to be presenting on some work looking at body-worn camera metadata and its utility to police agency decision-making. So this was done with colleagues at Dr. Charles Katz at Arizona State University, and then Dr. Craig Uchida with Justice and Security Strategies. So as already described a bit, body-worn camera metadata has a number of potential uses and benefits for police agencies, which are relatively unexplored to date. First, and perhaps most important, body-worn camera metadata can be linked to other case management systems to examine activation levels by officers, squads, and departments. If body-worn camera metadata linked to cases and incident types, these can be used as valuable information in monitoring officer behavior and locating and reviewing problematic behavior or incidents where complaints arise. Body-worn camera metadata may also provide a better understanding of officer activity than other records or case management systems commonly used to track officer behavior. For instance, these data often depict the number of minutes officers spend on a particular incident, which officers are present at the scene, and the order in which officers arrive. So the detailed nature of this data provides previously unknown information on tactical, strategic, and administrative decision-making by police officers. Because of this, body-worn camera metadata might prove as important as the digital evidence collected through the body-worn cameras themselves. So while we expect body-worn camera metadata can be an important source of information for police agencies and researchers, what this looks like in practice is unclear. So to address this, we took a case study approach to examine body-worn camera metadata generated by the Phoenix Police Department. Specifically, we explore whether body-worn camera metadata can provide more information on officer activity than their records management system, which includes information from emergency calls for service, officer-initiated activity, and non-emergency calls for service. And that we look at the validity and reliability of the body-worn camera metadata. So just as a little background, the Phoenix Police Department was an early implementer of body-worn cameras, with cameras first deployed in 2013. By 2020, they reached full deployment among units. The initial body-worn camera policy stated that officers must activate their cameras when they arrive on a scene or engage in enforcement contacts. This was revised in 2018 to require starting a recording at the time of mobilization when they receive a call. So to examine the body-worn camera metadata, we link it to the records management system data. We restrict the analyses that I'm going to talk about today to just 2020 and only among line-level police officers. Before moving into any analyses, we removed duplicate cases in the records management system and body-worn camera data. And we also removed cases that would not necessitate a response, such as those where an officer was never dispatched to the scene. Further, we only kept in units with at least a 30% activation rate or higher. So this removed officers employed in the Drug Enforcement Bureau, violent crimes, family investigation, airport, and homeland defense. So as you can see on the table on the right, the majority of officers' activity we look at are patrol officers. So first, to demonstrate how many incidents are captured on body-worn camera, this slide presents body-worn camera activation rates by officer assignment. So the portion of the columns in red show when the RMS data and the body-worn camera metadata matched for a case, meaning a body-worn camera was activated for a case that's present in the RMS data. So as you can see, the average activation rate's about 74%. Patrol officers have a relatively high activation rate at 76, similar to crisis intervention and traffic enforcement officers. We see lower levels of activation in other units like community policing and proactive enforcement. So next, the yellow part of the column shows how many additional cases were in the RMS data set, and the blue column shows how many more were in the body-worn camera metadata that did not link together. So across the board, the RMS data contains substantially more information on the totality of incidents. body-worn camera metadata, again, are the additional activations that don't match a case in the RMS data. So you can see there's more incidents of this for proactive enforcement and community policing. The RMS and body-worn camera metadata, there's a separate tag within each categorizing the type of incident. I show here the incidents responded to by patrol officers. So the highlighted section in yellow represents where body-worn cameras or RMS incidents in the database did not link together. So if we were only using the RMS to examine officer activity, only about 2% of incidents would be missing. If we wanted to use the body-worn camera metadata to examine officer activity, we're missing almost a quarter of the activity. We're interested in missing data bias in these sources. So missing data bias occurs if we're using the body-worn camera metadata to examine officer activity, if that would result in a less accurate understanding of the activity, using RMS data as a benchmark. So we identify these cases by relying on incident types reported in the RMS data, but not in the body-worn camera metadata. In essence, we're supplementing additional cases and incident types that should have appeared in the body-worn camera metadata. So first, looking at RMS incident type, if the body-worn camera metadata is missing, so that 22% of cases in the RMS where there was no body-worn camera footage recorded, we see a range of offenses with no clear pattern. Those incidents are marked disorder, violence, traffic, we see property, and suspicious incidents. So looking at the body-worn camera case type, if the RMS data is missing, these cases are overwhelmingly more minor offenses. Almost 29% of these are administrative and 17% are traffic related. So to visualize this a little bit better, this slide shows the number of cases patrol officers responded to by incident type. The portion of the column in yellow shows what was recorded in the RMS. The maroon part of the column shows what would have been added if the cases were recorded in the body-worn camera data, but not in the RMS, if that was added to it, basically approximating the distribution of incident types in the missing data based on the incident type in the body-worn camera metadata. Similarly, the next slide shows this distribution for the body-worn camera metadata. The RMS cases are adding substantially more information about officer activity here. So while missing data is a problem in the body-worn camera metadata, we also want to examine the reliability of incident type classifications between the two data sources. In essence, are they being described in the same way when they do link between when they're present in the RMS and the body-worn camera data? Overall, most cases were correctly classified when included in both the RMS and body-worn camera metadata, meaning the type of incident in the body-worn camera metadata was the same as in the RMS data. So this is especially true for crisis intervention, patrol officers, and traffic enforcement, with most categories correctly classified over 99% of the time. The incidents with the lower classification levels were most often for interpersonal and property offenses. So if we do have more definite and reliable body-worn camera metadata, we can start to more confidently examine other aspects of this data to measure different activities of officers. So the next slide presents the mean time officers are spending on different types of assignment. So body-worn camera metadata suggests that officers are spending substantially less time on incidents than the RMS data. So according to body-worn camera metadata, officers spend approximately 17 minutes on each incident compared to 75 minutes per incident based on the RMS data. Putting this all together, body-worn camera as currently captured in this case does not necessarily provide a more accurate understanding of officer activity compared to a records management system. The findings suggest that body-worn camera metadata currently lacks concurrent validity due to modest body-worn camera activation rates, but it is reliable when contrasted with RMS data regarding the incident type bias. So the incidents, so the types of incidents that were missing from the body-worn camera data and the incident type classification, whether they were categorized the same in both data sources. While this data isn't there yet in fully describing the extent of officer activities, body-worn cameras are a rapidly advancing technology, and there's still clear value to metadata. body-worn camera metadata, when combined with RMS data, can be used for identifying those officers and work groups who chronically violate department policies and require additional training, oversight, or discipline. As activation rates improve, body-worn camera metadata might serve as a valuable alternative to RMS data, or provide agencies with a more robust source of data that captures information on incidents not otherwise captured by an RMS, particularly for agencies without a records management system who want to engage in data-driven strategic planning. I want to close with a couple things to think about when you're establishing and using body-worn camera metadata for decision-making. First, it's important to have a way to link incidents between body-worn camera metadata and other case processing systems to determine who and how often people are activating their cameras. Second, high levels of missing data reduce the representativeness of that data. So in this case, that occurs when there's low activation rates of body-worn cameras. So the body-worn camera doesn't represent the majority of cases officers are handling. The rule of thumb for missing data is between 5 to 15%. So with that, we'd want activation rates at the department level of 85 to 95%. Third, you want to ensure there's not systematic bias in the missing data before using it to examine police activity. Are certain officers or units chronically not recording incidents? Are certain incident types less likely to be recorded? And then finally, other checks on the reliability and accuracy of metadata are important, such as through examining the categorization type between data sources, if you are confident in the accuracy of those other systems. All right, thank you.
I'm Captain Brendan Hooke with the Fairfax County Police Department, and I'm joined by our body-worn camera program manager, Lieutenant Mike Lentz. I am the Assistant Director of our IT Bureau, and the body-worn camera program is one of many that we oversee. Let me go over the big picture. The big picture for us is, well, I'll go through. We're Fairfax County Police. We're just outside Washington, D.C. We're a very large agency. We're the largest municipal agency in Virginia. When fully staffed, we're a little over 1,500 officers, and we have over 1.1 million residents. We use a number of different digital evidence management platforms, but when it comes to body cameras, we're with Axon for body cameras, in-car videos, and interview rooms. Mike can go through the numbers of videos and our data. The big picture for us is that metadata for us helps drive compliance and certain processes like discovery. We had to automate a lot of these processes to help really make it easier for our officers to comply with discovery. And that was really our biggest headache. And improving metadata capture and linking systems really helped us get there. So with that, Mike, I'll turn it over to you and let me know when you want me to jump in.
Captain said, we really utilize our metadata for strong evidentiary reasons. Pushing it towards video evidence management, it is the linchpin of that. It impacts how we store, classify, and share critical incidents or critical video evidence in running a gamut of criminal activity. It leads into guiding our future use of technology. For department leaders, metadata is an invaluable resource. It informs them the strategic use of our Axon body-worn camera system and the platform, as well as other digital evidence management systems. We recently partnered with Genetech. I heard Rochester talking about that. We are in the final steps of going live with that system, and we're very anxious as to what it'll generate and the metadata that we ingest into that system. The retention decision-making aspects of it, it plays a pivotal role in determining the retention of video evidence, how long we're going to keep it. It empowers our digital evidence management system to retain videos based on factors like the severity of the crime, while discarding videos that are captured during routine police duties, which are inadvertently recorded. We have approximately 2.9 million videos at this point over a 4-year period. We piloted the system in 2018 with deployment in 2019, with full deployment done by 2021. At this point, we're at about 2.9 million videos. Like I said earlier, we're just under 20,000 of uncategorized videos. And we'll talk a little bit more about that when we get into the automation aspect of it. But we're hovering about 0.7% of uncategorized videos. We usually hover between there and 0.5%, which isn't bad considering the total amount of videos that we ingest on a daily basis.
I'm very
Um,
jealous of Rochester, and I think we might need to hire Saladin. I think I met him at San Diego this last week, and he is very nice, but I like the nag him and tag him phrase.
We do have our own in-house nagger and tagger. He is tenacious when it comes to our categorized videos, and he does keep them in control. He's one of our ITB staff here, and he's very tenacious. Role of metadata and automation. Automation has become a huge asset for us. Not only does it streamline our workflow, it's revolutionized our digital evidence management process in many aspects. The performance applications. The first and foremost for me, coming from a 20-year street cop, it reduces the frontline workload. One of the most compelling outcomes of the metadata automation initiative has been a substantial reduction on workload for our frontline patrol officers. We do use auto tagging with evidence.com, and it grabs about 95% of our videos. When an officer marks on scene for a larceny, they go handle the call and they come back out. They clear that event. They don't have to manipulate any evidence in evidence.com. 95% of the time, if they're marking on scene in a reasonable amount of time after activating their cameras, that should be grabbed up by the API and tagged and appropriately put in place for the evidence for later case management. It seamlessly automates the tagging of videos to align with the original dispatch received by officers, like I just said in that example. This automation extends to searching for evidence related to these tags. Not only are we tagging it with the proper category, our API is also tagging the name of the offender, as well as our agency case number generated from our RMS. And it will tag it with our event number from dispatch also. So it makes it very searchable when it comes time to retrieve that evidence for court purposes, and streamline collaboration with our Commonwealth Attorney's Office.
Mike, was it we upgraded tags to include if an arrest was made, and then that triggers the automatic sharing to the Commonwealth Attorneys? Is that the layer metadata we added there?
So thank you, Captain. The important aspect to add to that is the arrest tag is the catalyst for the auto tagging. Once the API searches through those databases and finds the arrest tag, it will then search down anything else that shares a similar or an exact event number. It'll grab all those event numbers of similar, or it'll grab the same event numbers, case them all up, and then it'll automatically share that with the Commonwealth Attorney's Office, our prosecuting body here in Fairfax County.
And if I may, just that solved such a major problem for us. That was something I heard about twice a week from chiefs and deputy chiefs in our agency, and some smart people that Mike and I work with, if you want to explain more. But that, to us, I consider a significant accomplishment.
A significant accomplishment. Again, back to my background as a street cop, it very much so streamlined the workload for the frontline officers. They don't have to worry about casing up all the evidence or doing I like to call it the death by 1,000 cuts, by manipulating all this evidence within the system. Most of the time it's done for them. There are some extenuating circumstances when it's not cased up, but at that point, the officers are responsible for their own case management, which boils down to the fundamentals of police work. At the end of the day, it's their case and they need to take ownership of it, which they're very good at doing. Sometimes they need help because the automation makes them forget how to actually do it. So sometimes they need to be helped down the line. We have a staff of a couple of digital evidence managers that help us do that with the officers when they're having trouble. We also have a staff in the Commonwealth Attorney's Office who we liaison with, who are great at reminding us when we have not shared evidence. They'll certainly let us know. And where this all starts is training in the academy. Training and compliance is another huge aspect of this. Without training and compliance, it's chaos with no order. Today, I just taught the next graduating academy class that's actually graduating today. We do a 4-hour block on the body cam system, the Axon View portion of it, the in-car video system, and then we delve into evidence.com, which is what ties everything together and really encases all our metadata and makes it into a product we can use. During their time, the academy officers receive comprehensive training on the proper entry of metadata. This covers crucial aspects like classification of events, event numbers, and case numbers, and not to use hyphens because evidence.com does not like hyphens. That's the biggest key point I had for my academy class yesterday. Enhanced search and automation, properly entered metadata. It not only enables the officers to easily search for evidence, it serves as a foundation for our auto tagging automation that we talked about earlier. And it really streamlines the evidence management aspect. We have ongoing refresher training, because like I said before, the automation it just makes the officers forget the skills. The training becomes stale and they need refresher training sometimes. We make guides that we create in-house, and sometimes we use canned training from Axon, but we make them available to the officer. So when that officer needs to do something at evidence.com concerning metadata, it's 3 a.m, I'm at home in bed. They can go onto BlueNet, which is our internal network where the officers can reference all kinds of training material. They can pull up a guide. It's right there. It's very simple for them to use, and it'll walk them through. And in part for that, the ongoing training in the form of videos and guides, we really believe that helps the officers get through the system and make the best use of this metadata. Guidance through departmental policy. The application of metadata is governed by our departmental policies. It provides clear guidance and expectations for officers to follow. There's no gray area. They know when they're supposed to be turning on their cameras, when they're not. These policies certainly play a crucial role in maintaining consistency and integrity of our evidence management. With a weak policy, the system can fall apart quickly. Analytics for device compliance. Metadata just doesn't serve as evidentiary management purposes. It provides valuable analytics. They help drive device compliance. And I know we had a lot of speakers talking about the device compliance. And that metadata allows the commanders, it empowers them with the insights where they need to identify those deficiencies when it becomes evident that there's non-activation issues. And that also leads into the early intervention for efficiency. One of the remarkable benefits of these analytics is early intervention. When the commanders notice there's a deficiency, they can notice it in almost real time, and it allows for intervention before these issues escalate into significant challenges for us. We've adopted some technologies, including the Axon Performance that we're going to pilot here. That's going to automate a lot of aspects of how we use metadata to identify those deficiencies. We're in the startup steps right now, but we're really anxious to see how it shakes out. Hopefully we can use this product from Axon to hone in our activation rates and refine our metadata and where we use it.
Mike, there's a question here that you might be able to answer. And I'll touch on what I think about it, but it's from Joshua Ortiz, and it says, we currently have Visualix and some other system, and they're converting into Axon, and they want to know if there are any tips or struggles of teaching officers evidence.com. And I'll answer with about the technical, just data conversion into evidence.com. We came from a Panasonic in-car video system going into evidence.com, and just know that a year and a half, 2 years later, that's still ongoing. So the training, Mike can touch on that, but I could say from a technical point of view, data conversion can take quite some time. And again, we have significant amount of data, so you might not have the issues we have, but specifically metadata converting over was where we were having problems. So go ahead, Mike.
From the training aspect, switching from a legacy system to a current system, Axon being the one particular. I wasn't here when Panasonic, I was here when Panasonic was on the street, but I was never on the back end of it in terms of the development and training. But I can say this about Axon. They're an extremely responsive vendor. They have a lot of good training materials put together. They offer on-site training. They've been doing it for the last 7 or 8 years. They're professional. They're probably the best in the business. There's a reason they have 70% of the law enforcement market, and I'm not at all selling for Axon, but I feel like I work for them more than I do the police department sometimes. But when we need assistance with training material or any kind of guides, they're quick to step up. We give them our policy. They can sort of shape their training around that. And we've had no issues with them when it comes to asking for help, whether it be on the training side or the technological side. They're quick to step up and help us out. We haven't had any major hurdles. The biggest hurdle would be working with the gamut of user experience. You have people who don't know how to turn on a computer, and on the top side of it, you have very proficient computer users. You have to bridge that gap and kind of curtail your training to meet that group of users. Hopefully that answered your question for you.
Thanks, Mike. Sorry to interrupt your flow there.
No worries.
That's what captains do.
The next question is how important is the linkage between DEMS and RMS? I believe it's very important. We're currently utilizing Genetec as a digital evidence management system. Our next vendor for our RMS is going to be Central Square, subcontract to Genetec. When Central Square goes online, the integration between our DEMS and RMS is supposedly seamless. And from what I've heard, it is seamless for those two systems to communicate, and increases things like searchability, continuity, workflow, all of that, all of those things together. It just creates more of a seamless workflow from
Can I clarify
Sure.
on that front? We're sticking with Axon. We're using Genetech as a digital forensic evidence management
Yes.
system. So, and it's via the RMS, but it's important to us that as we're building the new RMS, we want to make sure all our evidence, physical and digital, are in one place. So we have a linkage from Axon going into our new RMS so that once we go live, investigators and officers and prosecutors will be able to look at a case and see all evidence listed from the physical evidence to the digital, regardless of system. And that has required us to configure a number of interfaces that it just takes time and money.
I think the captain clarified that nicely. Thank you. To dumb it down, the way I dumb it down for myself is anything not ingested through an Axon product will go into Genetech. Anything that resulted from a search warrant or a forensic analysis of a device, that's where we will use Genetech as the repository for that information. I believe that is conclusion.
Okay, great.
To all three of our groups of presenters, I have some thoughts, but Quinn, I don't see any questions, but are there any other questions from the audience we want to handle real quick before we move toward wrapping things up?
No other questions from the audience. The two that came in were from Joshua Ortiz and then the anonymous attendee. So I guess we just open it up to John McCluskey, Adrian, and Kayla if they want to talk about linkage between DEMS and RMS, if they have anything additional to add there.
I mean, for us, without being able to link the DEMS data with our records management system or with CAD, then it would not be terribly useful. I mean, we could still use it as a way to say, hey, you know, what videos aren't tagged, et cetera, and we could still use it for individual cases, but it would be very difficult to get any worthwhile analysis, and it would be impossible to use it for our current project. So,
And I think I'll kick it over to John Markovic from BJA, who may have some thoughts or questions on what we've been talking about. So, John.
Yeah, well, first of all, I just want to really express my appreciation for what, is a very dynamic panel about a very dynamic topic. I think, we might call this everything you want to know about metadata, and then more and more and more. We're getting more data. It's becoming more complex, and we're learning more, including that evidence.com does not like hyphens. I guess that probably matters a lot if you have a records management system with key IDs that rely on hyphens. So it's important information to know. But what I think what we're seeing here is what, the adage about the framework of the 5 V's for big data, right? There's the volume, the velocity, the value, the variety, and the veracity. In velocity, I probably said more. I know I said more than 5 V's. I was losing track of which ones I said, but you get it. There's more volume, there's more variety. We're dealing with not just data from body-worn cameras, but it's being integrated with dashboard cameras, pole cameras, license plate readers, still video, still photos. And the vendors are coming at us fast and furious too, with new capacities, new promises. The validity, I think, is a question we're really addressing, and the veracity. We know that the body-worn cameras don't show everything, and people see things that the body-worn cameras don't show, and then the body-worn cameras see things that the officer doesn't see, at least initially, until he or she watches the camera. So it's just a very complex thing, and there's that adage in, I think, law enforcement and other places that you should develop policy before you jump to practice. But in reality, we know that the demand is to get these cameras out there, and that things are changing and evolving so fast that, we need to have agile development and the luxury of laying everything out and ironing out all the kinks before we implement just isn't going to happen in body-worn cameras, or maybe in today's technological world at all. So this, I think, presentation does a couple things. I think it sort of justifies or vindicates our move of the body-worn camera program away from just funding body-worn cameras to helping agencies like these, like Rochester and Fairfax County, show us what they're doing, helping us understand through their learning pains and choke points what we can do better and how we can do it better together. So I'll leave it at that. Hopefully there's a few other questions But I think also, I want to thank Mian and Captain Hooke for attending IACP. I think this presentation dovetails with what we presented there, but is not redundant with it. And those were along the same line. So I hope you guys got home more quickly than I did from IACP. So I'm still suffering the jet lag from that. So with that, I'll turn it back and see if there are any questions. If Mike or anybody else wants to make concluding remarks, please do so.
Have any other questions come in?
We did have one come in a little bit earlier asking for Dr. Freeman's contact information. And so that'll actually transition well to the slide here that has everybody's email in case you want to get in touch with everybody afterwards, talk a little bit more about their projects. I don't believe we've had any other type of questions come in. So attendees, if you have anything else to ask, last chance here. Otherwise, Mike, I'll leave it for you for any closing remarks in case you want to provide any.
Yeah, so if we just take a step back and think about that roadmap that I talked about in the beginning and what that allows, we heard from our presenters some very valuable information about how that roadmap can be used. Dr. Freeman and her work in Phoenix has really been focused on activation, looking at activation, doing that comparison between what's in the RMS and the metadata. Enormously useful, I think. And with Rochester, the focus wasn't so much on activation, rather it was on tagging. And then with our colleagues in Fairfax County, I mean, the automation there and the potential for that automation to reduce the workload of the line officers in terms of what they have to do in the field. But then, what really intrigues me is the lieutenant and captain we're talking about in terms of early intervention and how the metadata becomes useful for identifying deficiencies and allows the agency to intervene early on to make sure, whatever's needed in terms of addressing those deficiencies, it happens before things escalate. So really, I think that, the focus on metadata really is just going to continue. And I think that the value that it provides an agency in terms of optimizing, what's in captured from those cameras that are out there every single day, recording hundreds and thousands of encounters every single day. That's really, I think, a direction that we're all going to be looking at as we move forward. So those are my kind of final parting thoughts. Again, I'll reiterate what John said, just in terms of thanking our presenters, both for their work at IACP last week, as well as what they've done this morning. So I think with that, we'll move toward closing it out. Quinn?
I'll thank everybody for attending and hope you have a great day.